All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are dropping straight into the shadows of what is, honestly, one of the greatest ancient political thrillers ever recorded. We're traveling back over 2.5 millennia, right into the heart of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. We're going to witness a crazy story full of murder, secret identities, a daring, almost heist-like assassination, and an entire empire won by the neigh of a horse. Yep, you heard that right. This is the cinematic rise of Darius the Great. So I want you to imagine for a second that you're a noble in the absolutely massive Persian Empire. We're talking the largest empire on Earth at the time, stretching all the way from Egypt to India. Now imagine that the absolute ruler you bow to, the guy holding all the cards, isn't actually who he says he is. What if a usurper somehow successfully hijacked the throne right under the noses of the world's most powerful nobility? Well, according to ancient accounts, that is exactly what happened. Section 1. A Throne of Lies. Okay, to set the stage for this ancient true crime story, we really have to look at the timeline. You see, after Cyrus the Great died, his son Cambyses took the throne. But Cambyses was, well, deeply paranoid. Before heading off to conquer Egypt, he secretly ordered the murder of his own brother Bardia. And this extreme secrecy, it created the perfect loophole. While Cambyses was bogged down fighting in Egypt, a magus, which is a Zoroastrian priest, named Galyomata, realized that pretty much no one actually knew the true prince was dead. So Galyomata audaciously steps right out of the shadows, claims he's Prince Bardia, and just snatches up the ultimate power vacuum. Cambyses rushes back to stop him, but mysteriously dies on the journey, literally leaving the imposter with the keys to the entire empire.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth does a fake king avoid a massive, immediate rebellion? Well, the usurper was incredibly politically savvy. It turns out the ancient playbook for winning people over isn't really that different from today's. He immediately secured the masses by abruptly canceling all taxes and military drafts across the empire for 3 whole years. Basically, he gave the people an immense financial break, which, as you can imagine, made him wildly popular almost overnight.
Section 2. Discovering the Earless Usurper. But, the honeymoon phase doesn't last forever. Things started getting weird, and paranoia really started growing among the elite. The new king was acting incredibly reclusive. I mean, he rarely held public audiences, and when he actually did, he kept his head wrapped tightly in a turban. A powerful Persian nobleman named Otanes started connecting the dots, and he suspected that the man sitting on the throne wasn't Prince Bardia at all, but rather that magus named Gaumata. And Otanes remembered a very specific, pretty gruesome detail about Gaumata. Years ago, Cyrus the Great had ordered a brutal physical punishment for a crime Gaumata had committed. Both of his ears were cut off. So this was the exact physical evidence Otanes needed. If the king had no ears, well, it was undeniable treason. But here's the catch. How exactly do you check the ears of a reclusive, heavily guarded emperor?
Well, Otanes had an inside operative, his own daughter, Phaidame. She had been married to the late Cambyses, and, as was custom back then, she inherited her place in the new king's harem. So Otanes sends her on this absolutely terrifying mission. While the king slept, she had to carefully feel his head. I mean, just imagine the sheer heart-pounding terror of this tactile moment. In the pitch black of the royal bedchamber, with her life literally on the line, Phaidame reached out in the dark and felt only smooth scars where his ears should have been. The ultimate lie was confirmed.
Section 3. The Secret Alliance.
So with this horrifying truth finally out, Otanes couldn't exactly just blast it to the public, right? The imposter was way too popular with the tax-free masses. Instead, he took this explosive intel to a very small, tightly knit circle of the Persian elite. He recruits 5 highly trusted nobles, and then, shortly after, a young man named Darius arrives. Darius was of royal Achaemenid blood and had actually been the personal spear-bearer to the late King Cambyses. Get this, he was only 21 years old, yet he steps up as the crucial 7th member of this elite hit squad, totally prepared to change world history. Their one singular goal: overthrow the false king. But they immediately bumped heads on strategy. Otanes, who was older and more cautious, wanted to gather an army and build a traditional, massive rebellion. He was terrified of acting too fast. But Darius pushed for a bold, high-stakes Ocean's 11-style heist, in and out before the king could even blink. He argued that the longer they waited, the higher the chance that someone would get cold feet and betray them for a massive reward. Darius insisted they needed to strike the palace right then and there. And you know what? His absolute audacity won the room.
Section 4. Assassination in the fortress.
Okay, the tension really ramps up here as the 7 conspirators literally march straight up to the gates of the usurper's Median stronghold. Let's break down this audacious infiltration. First, they totally bypassed the outer guards. Because these 7 men were the absolute highest-ranking nobles in the empire, the guards simply let them pass out of respect. They didn't suspect a thing. Second, once they got inside, the eunuchs tried to stop them, but the 7 men drew their weapons, killed the guards, and breached the inner royal chambers by sheer, brutal force. Finally, they found Gaumata. A violent close-quarters combat broke out, and in the end, it was Darius who ultimately struck down the earless impostor.
And the assassination triggered absolute chaos. After parading the severed head of the impostor to the public, a visceral, fiery purge of the impostor's inner circle erupted in the streets. It became known as the Slaughter of the Magi. The false king was dead, triggering immense bloodshed, but it left them with the ultimate power vacuum. The largest empire on Earth was now completely without a ruler.
Section 5. The Neighing Horse Omen.
So, how does 7 elite assassins decide who gets to rule the world? Well, according to the Greek historian Herodotus, they didn't fight over it. Forget complex elections or drawing straws. They left it to their horses. Seriously. They made a royal wager, leaving the decision completely to divine providence. They agreed to gather at dawn on horseback right outside the city. The rule was beautifully, absurdly simple. The rider whose horse was the first to neigh at the exact moment of sunrise would become the king of the entire Persian Empire.
Now, this part brilliantly illustrates the duality of ancient history. On one hand, Herodotus tells us that Darius's groom, a really clever guy named Opaberries, basically cheated using a bit of ancient royal horseplay. The night before, he brought a mare to that exact spot. In the morning, he rubbed his hand with the scent of the mare and held it right up to the nostrils of Darius's stallion, causing the horse to just wildly neigh at the sunrise. But simultaneously, ancient sources claim a sudden, deafening thunderclap boomed from a totally clear, cloudless sky. To the other nobles, this wasn't just a horse neighing, it was the terrifying, undeniable approval of their supreme god, Ahura Mazda. The other 6 nobles immediately dismounted and bowed down to Darius.
Section 6. The Behistun Inscription. But winning the wager was really only the beginning. The second Darius took power, the empire instantly fractured. Several provinces rebelled, and multiple other figures started popping up everywhere, claiming to be the true heirs. Darius had to spend his entire first year putting down massive revolts. The sheer scale of the chaos is staggering. To put it in perspective, he fought 19 major battles and violently crushed 9 rebel kings just to finally stabilize his hold on the throne. An absolutely wild year.
So, to legitimize this incredibly explosive and bloody rise to power, Darius created a monumental piece of imperial propaganda. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a multi-million-dollar media blitz. He commissioned the Behistun inscription, which is this massive relief carved high up into a cliff face, and it was written in 3 languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, making it essentially the Rosetta Stone for understanding cuneiform today. The carving vividly depicts Darius holding a bow, stepping triumphantly on the fallen Gaumata, with all 9 rebel kings bound together in ropes, standing right before him. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is how Darius himself framed this entire saga. In the inscription, he explicitly states, "I asked help of Ahura Mazda, and with a few men slew that Gaumata, the Magus. The lie made them rebel." For Darius, his victory wasn't just some bloody coup, it was a holy war of truth against the lie. In his propaganda, the lie is treated almost like a literal, physical, demonic entity that he, the divine protector, had vanquished to save the empire from chaotic deception.
But as we wrap up, we really have to look at the shadows of this story one last time. Darius painted himself as the ultimate champion of truth who miraculously saved Persia from an earless impostor. But what if the man he murdered actually was the true Prince Bardia? Did an ambitious 21-year-old spearbearer just invent the greatest lie in history to completely justify a coup against the rightful prince? Honestly, we will probably never truly know. Because in the ancient world, truth isn't always just a matter of facts. It's whatever the last man standing carves into the rock. Keep that in mind next time you read a triumphant history. Thanks for joining this explainer.